on my right. Can everybody hear me?
Is it rated?
What's that? No,
Is it rated? Good.
it's fine. There are some chairs on this side of the room. Yes, I'm going to ask them to move.
Janitor asked that we discard the candles,
Yeah. And the corner of the room that everybody's in the back there, there's more room on this side. That's a little bit congested. Yeah. I think there's plenty of room on this side of the... There are anybody left standing? That's good. Thank you all for coming. It's my morning started by coming into this building after I dropped my daughter off at the middle school. And I walked into the building, and for the 10th year, I found myself in this room, passing through a veil of moisture. And all I could feel was my heart tugging at the images on the screen, at the candles being lit. And then the names on the wall slowly started to appear. The concept of the bricks has been ongoing now since we began this, and it seems to grow, and it's becoming a little bit more of a commitment. For the first time, I see a photograph. I've never seen a photograph on the wall before. And that tells me that we're getting a little bit closer and deeper into our heart to bring out the images that evoke the memory of our past including the life before, the life in the middle, and the life now. These bricks are paper. This is the lower school. We have a memorial in the high school that also is made of bricks, and those come from Jerusalem. That's a memorial we have in commemoration at the high school. And slowly we're combining the schools together in their effort to fulfill the commandment to remember. There is just such a blessing in the room that everybody sitting here is fulfilling that commitment, and that we're all participating together, as Peter Geffen has put it into the beginning of the slideshow that is presented in this room, as our family. And to view each other as family, and to recognize that we have something in common. And that commonality brings us to this evening. When the brick wall was created in the Beit Midrash in the high school, there are 6 columns that go horizontally, and there are 8 that go vertically. And for a long time, I never understood what the 8 vertically meant. And it was this morning that I realized that the first 7 I can understand as being the days of the week. And finally, the 8th day is related to the 8th day of a child, a male child being born and entering the rite of passage and entering a covenant. And to me, I finally realized that the 8th brick in the wall in the high school represents the covenant that we have with each other to remember. And in the spirit of remembrance, we've invited a family member to speak of her experience and for her to share in this evening with us what that was like. There are lots of people I'd like to thank. I would like to specifically point out, and if they would please stand, is members of the committee. If you're in this room tonight, continue standing, please. This is the group that we meet once a month and are committed to perpetuating our commitment to remembering, and so that we can leave to our children and the future generations the information that we are collecting. And I could, with gratitude, describe to you that in the fall, we hope to, with the support and the permission of the school at large, that we will, through the new website that's being redesigned for the school, that our committee will have its representation with all of its archives and all the videos that we have collected over the years for the future generations to be able to gain access to that information, and for them to be able to continue the legacy and bring this information further into the future. And it's with this gratitude that I'm honored to have participated in this venture and this journey to help me personally, but to also help us as a community to remember. At this point, I'd like to welcome Roanna back from Israel and to introduce the next part of the event.
Good evening, everybody. It's particularly moving to be here tonight. Last night at 8 p.m. I was in Jerusalem as people were getting ready for Yom HaShoah, and certainly one could feel it. You just know it. And when I came to school today and coming here this evening, I again am reminded of the importance of school, of what the importance of an education is, and how important it is for us to be certain that our students both never forget, but that they look to a world that hopefully will be a better place for them, and that they will participate in making it a better world. Given the nature of the program this evening, I would like for us to have it flow without too many introductions as to what will come next. So I just want to take really 3 or 4 minutes to both thank the committee. Over the years, this committee has not only grown in numbers, but it has grown in the impact it has had on the entire community, for parents, for students, for educators. And it would not have happened without the commitment of so many devoted people. We now have many, many different committees as part of the Holocaust Committee. So to you, Harry, thank you so very much for giving us your passion and for sharing with us so much time and so much effort. And to the Education Committee, really headed by Eva Fogelman, to Trudy Gottesman, the Archive Committee, the Events Committee made up of Eva Stark-Zadorsky, and Leslie, tonight, of course, a special night for you with your mother being here, and very, very meaningful to us. We're delighted to have you here, Sally. and to Suzanne Weinstein, who's also part of the event committee. The website committee, which is a newly formed committee, David Fogel is in charge of that. And of course, to our own staff, our maintenance staff, Richard, and the staff, we thank them. Right after the memorial candle lighting, which will be led by Sally Frischberg and family, right after that, we will have just a slight variation in the program in that our students from the Heschel School, the Heschel Harmonizers, will have a presentation, and then after that, Leslie, you will introduce one. So it would be my honor now to ask you please to come up, Sally Frischberg and family, for the candle lighting ceremony.
My name is David Rosen. I'm the musical director of the Heschel Harmonizers. We are the Heschel Harmonizers. We're the a cappella group / choir from the Heschel High School. I want to thank you for having us tonight. We're very honored to be singing here for such a special event occasion. We're going to be singing 2 songs for you tonight. The first one is called B'Shem Hashem, and the second is Achenu. So we hope you enjoy.
Hashoah ba'agala uvizman karim. Kol Beit Yisrael, Aleinu. Kol Beit Yisrael, Hanetunim Betzara u'Ashivya, Haomdim ben bayam u'ben bayam ba'asham. Aleinu, Kol Beit Yisrael, Koleinu. Kol Beit Yisrael, Hanetunim Betzara u'Ashivya, Haomdim ben bayam u'ben bayam ba'asham. Hamakom Yerachem, Yerachem Aleihem, V'yotzihem Mizara, Lirvacha, U'me'afel Le'ora, U'yeshivu Li'geula, Hashoah ba'agala u'vizman karim. Ra'ayem Aleihem, Yotziem Lirvacha, U'me'afel Le'ora, U'yeshivu Li'geula, Hashoah ba'agala u'vizman karim. Kol Beit Yisrael, Koleinu. Kol Beit Yisrael, Hanetunim Betzara u'Ashivya, Haomdim ben bayam u'ben bayam ba'asham. Hamakom Yerachem Aleihem, Yotziem Lirvacha, U'me'afel Le'ora, Yeshivu Li'geula, Hashoah ba'agala u'vizman karim. Hashoah ba'agala u'vizman karim.
Good evening. My mother, Sally Frischberg, was born in a small Polish village in 1934, the eldest of 5 daughters. When she was 5 years old, the Germans invaded Poland, changing her life forever. Tonight, she will share her story with you. But first, I would like to tell you a little bit about her. She was 13 when her family emigrated to the United States. Not speaking a word of English, she began her formal education. She did not have the luxury of a structured, consistent education until then. She attended Thomas Jefferson High School in Brooklyn, where at the age of 15 she met my father, who tutored her in geometry. I always think that he was the gift God sent her, saying, "I have tortured this little girl enough. Now I will do something nice for her." They've been happily married for 53 years. She went through college and earned a master's degree while working full-time. She worked full-time as a high school teacher in the New York City school system while raising my brother and me. I was named after her great-grandmother, Chaya Ruchel, a woman who died before the horrors of the Holocaust, and as my mother always said, was lucky enough to die in her own bed. My mother originated and designed one of the first courses on Holocaust studies offered in New York City. In 1997, she was recognized by the state of New York for her contributions as an educator by winning the Louis Yavner Award as Outstanding Holocaust and Human Rights Educator. When she retired after 30 years of teaching, she began a second career managing property in Brooklyn while still speaking over and over again about the Holocaust. Many of you may recognize her, as she and my father come every Thursday to the lower school and then the middle school to pick up my kids, Lee and Fanny, and spend the day with them. She never learned to swim or ride a bike or ski or ice skate, the results of her fractured childhood. Yet she rarely rests, never wastes time, and reads voraciously. Although she still sometimes nags me to clean my bedroom. She is the woman I admire most in the world. Every Holocaust survivor's story is a miracle. Please welcome my mother as she shares her miracle with you.
I think this is good. You hear me, right? I need help. I didn't grow tall enough because I didn't have good food for a long time. I'm making up for it now. Who knows? Next year I'll be taller. At any rate, my story begins at the age of 5, when the Nazis invaded Poland. Before that, I was a happy little girl, living in a backward town in Poland, but I didn't know the town was backward, and I didn't know that others had it better, and I was perfectly happy making dolls and cakes and castles out of dirt. It seemed to me a very natural thing to do. My friends were all Polish Catholic children, because in my town, I was the only Jewish child my age. So we were making all these wonderful dirt things together, and sometimes they got angry with me. Sometimes I was angry with them. But they insulted me in a very interesting fashion. They said, "You dirty Jew, Christ killer." I didn't know what to make of it, so I asked my mother, "Why do they say these things to me when we are angry with each other?" And my mother said, "Ignore them. You're a good little girl, and they don't know what they're talking about." And I said, "But Mommy, they're as dirty as I am. I never killed anyone. And oh, by the way, they told me to go to Palestine." And I said, "I don't know where Palestine is." And my mother repeated, "Forget it. It's not worth bothering about. You are a good little girl." And I believed it. And when the Germans came in and became guests in our house and acted so beautifully, behaved so properly, so primly, their manners were beyond criticism. And my parents were always frightened looking and anxious looking. And I used to try to make sense out of that. Why do these very nice people who behave so well frighten my parents? I didn't know then, but now I'm frightened by that too. Because what it tells me is that well-behaved people can become monsters if the circumstances are right. So how do we judge who the monsters will be? We don't know. And that worries me. I'd like to give my grandchildren instructions and say, when you see this, don't do that, and so on and so forth. And I don't know what to say. The German soldiers who stayed with us had a positive impact on our lives. One in particular, a man by the name of Mr. Arnold from the city of Munich, who knew how he got to where he was because he came from where everything was happening. He played chess with my father all the time, and they spoke to each other because we spoke Yiddish and he spoke modern German, and you know that the two are very closely related. And he told my father things that became useful eventually. In a way, maybe, he told my father that the well-mannered Germans they're in the process of becoming monsters. At any rate, when Mr. Arnold and his fellow soldiers moved on to the Eastern Front to continue the battle against the Russians, we were left without their physical presence. But Mr. Arnold's instructions stayed in my father's head. And when my father was making decisions, he was factoring in what Mr. Arnold had told him. And so when our orders came, most orders were for the entire population, 90% Catholic, 10% Jews. That was the Polish population. And most orders came for the entire population. But then some edicts were meant for the Jews only. You must turn in all your valuables to headquarters. My mother stitched her jewelry into her skirts, into the hems, and my father's dollars went into the shoulder pads of his jackets. He had dollars because he had two brothers living in the United States who, like all immigrants, tried to help the family back home. The next order came. All Jews must wear the Star of David. Why? We didn't know that this was meant to help them identify us as the victims whom they could exploit. Because, you know, we were of the white race, we talked Polish, we dressed the way our neighbors did. They couldn't tell us apart. The identity with the Star of David made their lives easier. The next order came in 1942, summer of 1942. I was 8 years old. All Jews must come to the railroad station on a given date at a given time. And my father said, "We are not going." My father sent word out to every Jewish member in the region that he could reach. Mind you, reach without a telephone, without meeting Jews, because that was now forbidden. They feared that we were conspiring against them, so we were forbidden, Jews were forbidden to meet. But the word went out from my father to all the others, and he said, "Do what you can, but don't go to the railroad station." Even though the propaganda said that things in the East where they were taking us were going to be wonderful, my father knew that there was nothing in Auschwitz, which we now all know as Auschwitz, that was wonderful, and that our decision was not to go. The only Jewish person in our region who was not persuaded by my father was my grandfather. His father said to my father, "You foolish man, why would you distrust these wonderful people? I remember the invasion of World War I and how well they treated us, how thoughtful they were, how considerate they were. They didn't hurt a soul. They did the best they could to take proper care. And now, all of a sudden, out of the clear blue sky, you decide that these bright, well-educated, cultured, progressive people can't be trusted? Why? These are God-fearing Christians." Germany was 50% Catholic, 50% Protestant. They were Christian people. Why do you not trust them? My father couldn't explain. How do you explain a hint, a look, an indication that things are not right? That's all Mr. Arnold could give. In 1941, when he was with us, maybe it was 42 already, we didn't know where we were going. And the Germans didn't really know either exactly what was happening. So therefore, my father lost the argument with my grandfather. My grandfather did go to the railroad station, and we never saw him again. We, on the other hand, ran away from home. But there was nowhere to run to because the population was anti-Semitic, deeply anti-Semitic. They weren't going to help us. Some who were not anti-Semites wanted the things that Jews would leave behind. So why would they help us stay alive? They wanted the goodies. Some were truly afraid. There was good reason to be afraid. And so no one would help us. And we left home and went into the fields. The fields had huge stacks of grains built into sort of round heaps. We approached those heaps of grain. We dug holes on the bottom. We got in there, and that became home for the day. Every night we got out. We did what we could to shake trees and get fruit, to pick up whatever we could, wherever we could, honestly or not. We stole from some of the farmers' homes. And we were surviving, changing location every night to be buried in another heap on another field every day. We were two families. My mother and father had, at the time, only 4 daughters. The youngest had died upon very soon after her birth. We had a set of twins. The younger twin, being weaker, did not last very long. But the older twin hung on. Her name was Faggy, and we were taking her with us. She was not talking yet. And then, of course, there were the 3 older girls. I was the oldest of 8. My uncle had 3 children, and they were the ages of my younger sisters. And my uncle said to my parents, "Let's stay together. We have the same handicap. We have small children. We can't get around too well, too easily. Whatever happens to one will happen to all. Let's stay together." And this little band of pitiful Jews was making their move every night, and we were surviving. But it wasn't getting any easier. And one night, a man whom my mother and my uncle knew from their early childhood found us. And when he found us, he explained that he was looking for us. He said, "You don't understand. This whole area is filled with gossip about you. You've been noticed. People have seen you. They talk about you all the time. And they will give you away as soon as they know where you are exactly, because we kept moving away." So he said, "I have come to help you. I will direct your movements. I will tell you where to go, because the area was searched and you will be safe there. And we will keep you alive." I often think of that man, because I don't think I could do what he did. I don't think I would go looking for trouble to save others. I just don't think so. Anyway, this righteous Gentile, this righteous man among men, did exactly as he promised. He came every night, and he instructed us, and he brought us whatever little he could. It wasn't much. He was a poor man. It was wartime. It was very hard to get anything. But he did what he could every single night. My mother, seeing how much he was doing, decided he will do more. And she asked him to give us shelter. And he said, "No, I'm afraid. I can't." And my mother begged every night, and he refused every night. And then one night he said, "Sylvia, you must stop asking me. You don't understand. I have a wife. I have children. I must think of them first. Please don't ask me anymore." And my mother said, "You tell your wife that we have jewelry, we have furs, we have dollars. It's all hers if she would cooperate." And soon she was persuaded. And he came one dark night, lined us up, holding hands, not a sound out of us, took us to his little farmhouse where he had the ladder ready to go to the attic. And as we arrived, he directed us upstairs. And when we came into the attic, we found straw all around the periphery. And in the center, there were buckets for us to use as toilets. The straw was our furniture. And he locked us up in there. And he said, "I'll be back tomorrow night." And he did come back every night. We heard him drag the ladder because he would always move it away so his children couldn't climb up and see us through the cracks. Brought the ladder into place, opened up the trap door, cleaned the toilets, brought up a pot of boiled beans and potatoes. And this was our diet. Because you see, we thought it's going to be days, weeks, maybe a few months, and then America would do its wondrous thing and defeat Hitler, and we'd be free. That's what we were waiting for. Well, it took a long time. The first winter we were there, Mr. Grocholski whispered to my mother that she had 4 more brothers surviving in the forest. And my mother said, "In the forest, in this cold? No, Stashik, no. They'll freeze to death. You must bring them here." And he said, "No, I can't. I'm afraid. It's too dangerous. We'll all die." And my mother assured him that no, they won't. They'll all live because God will reward him for his efforts. Maybe my mother knew what she was talking about because he brought my uncles. And he now had 15 Jews, one man. The rest of the world does nothing for the Jews, nothing. But Stanislav Grocholski does all that he can. Soon it became clear that my sister Faggy was not making it. Expected she could do anything, but she couldn't. She succumbed, she died. She's resting next to her son near that little house. The rest of us hung on. It was very difficult. One night my father whispered to me that should anything happen, and he expected that he would not make it, then I am responsible for the care of my mother and my sisters, because I am then the oldest capable member of the family. I must have been 9, maybe 9.5. He didn't expect that my mother could take care of the family, because my mother, after our baby was gone, never stopped crying, never. We couldn't talk up there, so no one could say to her, "Why are you crying?" or "Don't cry," or comfort her in some way. We couldn't do that. So my mother cried, and we all thought that she was mentally unhinged. She wasn't. My mother's heart was broken. There was nothing wrong with her mind. My father did make it, and in 1944, 2 years after we got up to the attic, we were liberated by the Russian army. That night, Mr. Grocholski put his family to bed and pulled the ladder over and opened the attic door and smiled, holding a lamp so we could see his smile, smiled from ear to ear and said, "You've been liberated. You're free. You can go now." But we couldn't. We couldn't go because we had been squished in that attic on our legs and they wouldn't work. So we were brought down, and when we were downstairs, we were instructed to never, never tell a soul that he hit us. This is our secret. You are not to reveal my identity. Swear to me. And we swore. And we never did reveal his identity until 43 years later when I visited the widow. We kept the secret as we had promised because we knew his reason for the secret. He did not want his anti-Semitic neighbors to find out that he saved Jews. He feared their treatment of him, that Jew-loving Stanislav Grocholski. He has to be taught a lesson. And so the secret was kept, and until, as I said, 43 years later when I blew the cover with the widow's permission. I wanted to visit, and I wanted her to see my family, and I wanted them to meet her. And I had a letter written asking if I may come and bring the family to meet her, or I said, is the secret still a secret? And she wrote back, you may come. The secret is no longer a secret, but I do not share the information with people who don't have a proper respect for it. I am grateful for that lesson because I deal with it exactly the way she said. I go all over and I speak to anyone who wants to hear, but I will not share any of the information with those people who think that the world is still flat. I will not waste my strength trying to explain the impossible to people who have a different view of life. Imagine my telling Ahmadinejad that, yes, there was a Holocaust, and yes, Jews did die, and yes, when we hear you say it, we believe it because it happened before. So we came down from the attic, we crawled away from the house, we were picked up by the Russian army. A Russian doctor talking Yiddish explained to us that if we listen to his instructions, we'll live, otherwise we'll die. And his instructions were, eat very little, nothing fatty. Your stomachs will learn to digest food again. You will recover. But if you do otherwise, you will die at once. And we know that the soldiers, the inmates who were freed by Americans, who are generous to a fault and gave them everything, and they gobbled it up, died on the spot. So we were lucky to be liberated by the Russians. At any rate, we returned home and discovered that we were the only Jews in the entire region who came home. No one else came home. And life was very sad. Everyone we loved was gone. There was no one to love us. We were not fit to live, but we struggled and we were making it. And who knows, we might have readjusted to life there. I don't know. Life is strange that way. But one night there was a knock on the door, and the men who came in were not from our town. They were Catholics from a nearby town who said, you are Jews. We don't want any Jews in Poland. Go back where you came from. Go to Palestine. The old story again. You dirty, Christ-killing Jews. They shot once. We were convinced that they would shoot us because they could, clearly. And in no time at all, we walked away and became, by choice, displaced persons. That is the next ugly chapter in the history of the Holocaust. We wandered for 2.5 years as displaced persons. And we, my family, the 12 survivors, finally wound up in the United States. Rather than try to explain about displacement and what a humiliating experience it is, before it has been written about and described, young people are now getting into the field and researching it. I would like to share with you the intimate thoughts of a survivor. What do survivors think? Are their thoughts the same as everybody else's? I think not quite. I've written it down because articulating it is not easy. I have not done this before. This has been mine. But what am I going to do with it? You are people who are sharing the upbringing of my grandchildren. I owe you something special. So this is what a survivor thinks. I am amazed at the course of my life. My survival borders on a modern-day miracle. My being able to speak to you about the events of the past is for me an extraordinary privilege and a very serious obligation. My uncle Naphtali, my favorite uncle, should have been here to give testimony. When we fled from home, my father insisted that Naphtali leave us as we were burdened with little children. My father insisted that Naphtali flee on his own. You are young and strong and free to run, my father said. You must survive in order to tell the world what happened to us, my father told his brother. My uncle Naphtali was murdered. I am here in his stead, and I'm keenly aware of the fact that I'm obligated to tell in his honor. I am a daughter of the people Israel. I'm trying hard to understand our unbelievable role in history and our extraordinary inheritance. I have learned to love my people, the Jewish people, though taught otherwise by our enemies. The endless persecution which came from institutional condemnation and demonization of us led to the teaching of contempt, expulsions, inquisitions, forced conversions, pogroms, and finally, the Holocaust. But it has not destroyed our spirit. Our record of survival, despite all the persecution, is without precedent or equal. And it is an awesome fact, no doubt envied by others. Our tenacity, resourcefulness, creativity, and our endless reemergence in history is ever so impressive and so inspiring. And yet, I often feel great existential anxiety. Are we too complacent now that we once again have a national home? Are we taking our present good fortune of being the most favored Jewish community in all of history in the entire world, the American Jewish community, are we taking it too much for granted? Are we wasting our accumulated precious wisdom on materialism, on trendiness, on dissipation? Are we self-destructing by willing to tolerate everyone and everything except our own fellow Jews? We seem totally indifferent to our collective fate. I fear where this will lead to. And yet, I dare hope that we will do better. We will accept responsibility for each and every one of us. We will embrace hard work and commitment to make the future safer. We'll accept each other, different though we are, because of our different histories. And in spite of the renewed efforts to demonize and destroy us yet again, we, the Jewish people, can and will live on and on and on. Our awareness of our history continues to inspire and energize us and give us cause to continue trying to repair the world, to choose life, to live. Am Yisrael Chai. If you have questions, I'll be delighted to share. You see a hand. We got to America because of those two brothers who sent dollars. When the war ended and we finally made it by every treacherous means you can imagine into the American zone, from the Russian to the British, finally the American zone. When we finally got there, the Americans had set up ways and means of helping these hopeless, helpless people. And they came to us. We wandered into a DP camp and they came to us, and as I recall, communication wasn't easy, but we managed. And you know, Americans speak a monolingual, and that made it more difficult. We managed, and they found us out from us that we had two uncles, two of my father's brothers were here. And they said, do you have addresses? And we did, but they were old. And they found them. They found my uncles, and my uncles told us that during the night they had a call. They came to the house and said, you have survivor family, do you want them? And my uncle said, yes, they did, and papers were sent. It took a long time to get us here because they wanted only healthy people. And my sister Miriam, who by the way is a very healthy person, seemed to have had a mark on her lungs, which they suspected might be TB. And so there was a delay, and that's why it took 2.5 years. But we were the second shipload of refugees after Truman opened the doors and let us in. And November 10th, 1947, we were here. Yes?
Can I see you in Ellis Island?
My name is there, yes, yes. My whole family. My husband takes care of that. We are not a forgotten family, yes.
How did you amuse yourself when you were in there?
Oh, we didn't amuse ourselves, darling. The attic was dark. The cracks in the wall were all the light we had. And we had nothing. Not a pencil, not a paper, nothing, nothing at all. And we had to be silent, totally silent. So this was the way we lived. It was not an amusing way, but you learn. It's almost impossible to believe that one can get used to everything. And I think therein lies a bit of danger too. We kind of get used to things and we begin to accept even the worst. And it's not good. But we survived, and that's good. Back there, lady.
What was the name of the town that you were from, and approximately where was it located?
The name of the town is Uzhayevica. No one ever heard of it.
I'm sorry, say it again?
But it's near two small cities, Pshevorsk and Kantruga. No one heard of them either. So it is not far from Yaroslav, and every so often there is a person who has heard of Yaroslav. And it's not too far from Rzeszów. And of course, not too far from Krakow. Everyone has heard of Krakow because of Pope John Paul. So that's where I come from. Yes, Mark.
Did you say the children who were living downstairs didn't know that you were heading up there?
When we visited in I don't know if it was 88 or 89 anymore, but it was very late in the 80s, and I got the widow to agree to have us come, and we visited, and we sat around and partied for a couple of nights and talked, and either Leslie or Jack or their cousins asked, "Did you know what was going on upstairs when our family was here?" And one of the daughters said, "Yes, we knew, but we didn't say anything because their father treated discussion of this as though it was the worst thing you could do. He gave looks that killed, and so they were silent, and no one talked about it, happily for us." Yeah. Yes.
How did your family know to trust the farmer when you guys were going to go hiding different places? Like, how did they know he wasn't going to trick you?
You don't know whom you can trust. You don't know. But if you have choices, you try to choose. We had one man who said to us, "I will come and I will direct you and I will help you." And he did. And the truth is that towards the end, this got so tough and so difficult, especially for his wife. She seemed to have had a nervous breakdown. And I remember, we don't discuss this at home, you understand. At home, I talk to myself, and it works. But I remember that as we were looking at the cracks in the wall of the attic, she would be feeding her chickens. She'd be throwing grains at them, and she would say, "You miserable chickens, I hate you. I wish you had never come into my life. I'm going to poison you one of these days." And we knew that we were the chickens. So my uncle went down to their house one night, and he said to the couple, he said, "Look, we hear you, and we know that you mean us when you talk of poisoning. And I want you to know that the underground, the resistance, knows that we are being taken care of by you. And if anything happens to us, you're toast." And of course, my uncle was bluffing. Nobody knew anything. That was a bluff. But that's all we had. And I don't know if she would have done anything. I don't know what would have happened, but the truth is we made it. When I talked to her during our visit, she told me, when I asked her, "Where are my cousin and my aunt buried?" she said to me, "I don't know." And I said, "How could that be? How could you not know? They're right here near your house." And she said, "You don't seem to understand that my mental health was so bad, my husband didn't tell me that you people are dying up there. And so I didn't know that anyone died and was buried and where they're buried." And I suppose that is true. He tried to spare her, and whatever it was, it worked. It's a miracle. Yes.
Did he ever get official acknowledgement as a righteous Gentile?
No, he didn't, because Yad Vashem has standards. And when the bribery issue entered the picture, and they said, "Oh no, that was not altruism, that was a bribe." And we my sisters and I kicked up a storm. We went there and we said, "What do you mean it was a bribe? That was nothing what we gave them," and so on. No, they have their standards and that's it. But I did manage to get their names on that white marble wall in Washington, a huge white marble wall with large gold letters. And Maria and Stanislav Grocholski's names are on that wall. Yes.
How did your mother and father have the courage to go outside and deliver a baby to the church?
How did my parents have the courage to leave the attic and take Faggy to the church? And this business of courage is a very intriguing kind of business. I kind of think that it comes from commitment. That if you make a commitment to do something and you work at it, the courage comes. My parents wanted to save Faggy. There was no way of knowing that it wouldn't work. And that gave them what it took, which you call courage, and we all call it courage. And they did it. It didn't work. Yes?
Your spirit of survival is absolutely extraordinary. I wonder if there are any tools or any ideas you can share for those of us who have not gone through anything like you, but just how you and your family were able to go through so many different scenarios and situations and survive and be as successful as you are.
I think I'll refer you to my best critic, my daughter Leslie. She told me the other day, "Mom, you're so practical. Don't you see the sentiment of this, the value of it?" And I am very practical, and I've always told her, "Leslie, I've had to be practical. Nothing else would work for me." And that's what I did. I am very practical. I kind of departmentalize, and I say, "No, this won't work, this won't work. I gotta go this way." And I do it. And one of these days, I'll make a mistake. But look, I have no guarantee of life.
As a pioneer in educating American youth in the Holocaust, would you share with us some of the experiences you've had in how your talk was received?
I have to say that the American boys and girls in the public schools make me so comfortable. When I enter a public classroom, I think with my Jewish children, I have a little bit of fear of frightening them. I do not want to frighten the Jewish children. I want them to have guts. But with a public classroom, I think I take a little greater risk. And I walk in there, and in no time at all, I feel like a fish in water, free as could be. And we talk about everything. And it used to be my classrooms where I taught an entire term. But now I find myself walking in, and within minutes, that comfort comes over me, and we talk, and they nod their heads at me. They understand me. And you know something? The other day, I had a wonderful experience of talking to a class where an Arabic youngster raised his hand, and when I called on him, he took out his notes. Clearly, he was new at this. And he said, "How do you explain that the Jews who suffered so much at the hands of the Germans are now doing the same to the Palestinians?" And I explained to him that that is certainly not our intention, and that he should try and understand that at this point we are motivated by fear. We will not be the first to die. If they threaten us, we'll kill first, I said to him. But that isn't hatred. That is fear. I said, learn about me, about us, and then go out and teach your people, and you will make a whole lot of difference. And he said, thank you, and sat down. The class left. I took another class. At the end of the second class, who's at the door of the room? the Arabic youngster I've come to say goodbye to, he said. I felt that there was something there that made my investment worthwhile. Who knows? Time will tell. Thank you very much.
At this point, if everybody could light their candle, we're going to light one and
Down the row and start one on each.
and didn't put
Thank you. Would you want you guys? Yeah.
She says she wants to make ledger fun everybody.
Can I light my candle from yours? Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Hold it like this.
I can't see.
Will you all please stand? El male rachamim shochen b'amromim hametzei menucha nechona tachat kanefei hashechina b'mahalot kedoshim utehorim Kezohar harakia mazehirim Et nishmot kol achenu b'nei Yisrael Anashim, nashim v'taf Shenitbechu v'shenechneku v'shenisrefu v'shenehergu Began Eden tehei menuchatam Anaha bal harachamim Hastirehim beseiter knafecha liolamim Utzror bitzror hachayim et nishmotehem Adonai hu nachalatam V'yanuchu v'shalom al mishkevotehem V'nomar Amen. Please join me in Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah Bi'alma divrach birutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael v'agala u'bizman kari v'yimru Amen. Yehei shmei Rabba mevorach li'olam u'li'omei almaya יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו. לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דאמירן בעלמה ויאמרו אמן. יהי שלום רבה מן שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו amen. Please join together in the singing of Hatikva. Kol od balevav pnima nefesh Yehudi homiyah ulefatei mizrach kadima ayin letzion Sophia. Oh Lord, tikvatenu, hatikva shnot apayim, liot amchofshi be'atzenu, Eretz Zion, Yerushalayim, liot am chofshi be'atzenu, Eretz Zion, Yerushalayim.
Everyone's invited to join us in the adjacent room where there are archives on the table and some refreshments. Nearest garbage can is right in the corner here. But make sure it's out.